Testing 1, 2.
Just to let everyone know, we are running a little bit late. We're just trying to get the technology running. So it'll be a couple of minutes, I'd say. Well, I don't know. I'm not a technology person, but that's why we're going to be a little bit late. That's all, just to explain it to everyone. Right, okay. Right, we're ready to start now. Everything's up and running. Are we gone live?
Yes.
Okay, right. So welcome to the Planning Committee of 4th of September 2024. There's only one item on the agenda tonight, which is the Article 4 direction. So I should explain to members of the public that the committee are both sides and officers are both sides of me up here, and I'm the chair of planning sitting here. Okay. Yes, I'll go through it. Yeah, don't worry. Should I go through? I'll get there in a second. Right. Okay. Right. Are there any apologies for absence? Everyone's here, I think. Okay. Right. Thank you. Urgent matters. Are there any urgent matters? There's none to my knowledge. Okay. Any declarations of interest? Okay. And any matters to be considered in private? I'm not aware of any, but please speak if there is anything. Okay. So minutes of the last meeting. I wasn't chairing, but some of you were here. Are you happy with those? Right. Thank you. Site visit attendance. We did have a site visit attendance, so we should record it, I suppose. So we did go to the site that's not actually an application tonight before us, but those that attended was myself, Councillor Mahmood, Councillor Raza, Councillor Hamidi, Councillor Iqbal, Councillor Padda. I think that's it. If I've missed anyone, please shout. Okay, thank you. And it was apologies from all the others. Okay, right. So we move on to the substantive agenda, which is the item on the non-immediate borough-wide accepting excluded areas and immediate for Perivale Ward only Article 4 directions. Alex, you're going to brief us on this. Yeah, I can't stop them taking pictures if they wish to take pictures. Unless anyone objects. We're online anyway, so I don't think pictures are going to make any difference. Yes, that's okay. Okay, do you want to? Yep. I could take mine up.
Okay, good evening, Planning Committee. Can you hear me okay? Just want to check. Good. This is quite an unusual item this evening. Normally we would be considering planning applications. But tonight the only item on the planning committee is the recommendation report that I prepared for a recommendation to make 2 Article 4 directions, one as a non-immediate and an immediate Article 4 direction. And I'll go into a little bit of background around the purpose of this and why we're doing this. So this is summarised in this slide deck, but I have provided more information in the report. So the purpose of this report and the recommendation is to withdraw the permitted development rights for changes of use which exist for dwelling houses which are classified as under a Class C3 to a small HMO which is classified as C4 use. Now, the Article 4 direction offers the mechanism in which to withdraw these current permitted development rights which exist. And permitted development rights, as you may be aware, exist for all sorts of development already in the planning process. However, in the recent 2 years, planning has been reviewing the impacts on the local amenity and in particular in response to residents' complaints around the large number of HMOs that have been created and what impacts they are causing. So having looked at all the evidence, gathered the evidence, which we are required to do, we are making a recommendation for 2 types of Article 4 this evening. The first being a non-immediate Article 4 direction, which would affect the whole of the London Borough of Ealing Planning Authority area, except for Perivale. And don't worry, I will come on to the next part about Perivale, but also excludes the Ealing area, which falls within the OPDC local planning area. Sorry. The second part of the recommendation is for an immediate Article 4 direction, which would be only for the Perivale ward area, and I will set out why we've come to those conclusions, and it is detailed in the recommendation report. In particular, if you make reference to Appendix B, that sets out some of the evidence. So that's the recommendation. So just a bit of a very quick summary of background behind this. We have a large number of HMOs within the borough, and the Appendix B sets out what we know about their existence. There are many of these HMOs provide very good low-cost housing, but some are also quite poorly managed and propose quite significant challenges in the local area. We have been receiving an increased number of complaints over many years, and in particular, the last 3 years, we have received quite a number of complaints, particularly from the Perivale ward area. So, you know, we are aware that HMOs can give lots of positive, can be positive in terms of providing low-cost housing, but they can also provide and raise concerns about the changing nature within the local community and the fear of loss of family homes as they get converted into HMOs. So with that in mind, officers have reviewed this matter, and it's in response to these complaints. We have gathered the evidence which we're required to do so in order to exercise the mechanism of an Article 4 direction. There's guidance which is set out in the planning system which requires us to do that, and that's set out under the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development Order. So I will briefly, I haven't prepared slides on every piece of evidence that we put into the report because it's there for you to see, but I think it's probably quite clear that we had to spend time gathering this information. We used quite a lot of information that had been previously gathered by our colleagues in the licensing section who worked towards implementing licensing, selective and mandatory licensing. But in addition to that, we were able to look at information that we have received in planning using our own databases, and also cross-referencing that with the council's other systems, including the MetaStreet data. So we were able to have a look at that, and we could see that there were some particular issues in relation to antisocial behaviour in certain areas. We've certainly received quite a number of complaints, but there's also, it's true to say that, you know, we were aware that we receive, in particular planning enforcement, there may be a suspicion that a property is being converted into an HMO, but at the very early stages we can't really do very much or intervene because there's no technical breach. So we kind of looked at all of that, and in particular we really did home in on the antisocial behaviour information, and we could see that in the last 3 years there's been quite a change in the Perry Vale ward area. So we did focus on that, and that is our primary reason for considering the immediate Article 4 direction in the Perry Vale ward. Now, just before kind of moving on to kind of like the next steps and things, so we think we've got enough evidence to make the case. It's important for the committee to understand that you're being asked to agree the recommendation. However, there are next steps that could be challenged, and so the evidence is required to be robust, which we consider it is. But part of the process will be to kind of submit this. Will be to submit this Article 4 to the Secretary of State for their approval or amendment or etc. So we need to bear that in mind. So we will do that, and I'm just going to move on to my final slides, is just to talk about the process. So tonight is about making a decision. Then following on from that, what we intend to do, we then have to actively make the Article 4 direction, and it becomes effective from the moment that we initiate a notification, and we would do that via site notices, press notices, etc., be across the entire borough, and that's when it's effective from. The notice also invites representations, and we have to give a minimum period of 21 days, but we will probably give a bit longer. And then we have to consider that information, and then there's also a time period in which we must confirm whether we want to make the Article 4. So it must be within 6 months of the effective date or the notification date, and at the same time that we would initiate the notification, we would simultaneously notify the Secretary of State. So hopefully that kind of makes the process a bit clearer in terms of what will happen next. It's also so the intention would be, once we want to confirm it, we'd have to bring it back to Planning Committee, which we think we can do that probably early part of 25, but based on the notification effective date start, we would be looking at, in particular for the non-immediate Article 4, that should be in place in a year's time. So the recommendation report sets out all sorts of scenarios as well. There are risks as well in terms of cost claims, etc., which you should all be aware of. And I think ultimately we also need to make the point that by having an Article 4 direction that takes away people's rights, it doesn't prevent people from applying for planning permission to, for those HMOs. The planning authority will still be required to assess the merits of those proposals in a similar way to dealing with the HMO applications that we already receive. So we would have to have very robust reasons to refuse. But certainly the Article 4 and the requirement for planning permission to be obtained means that residents in the local area will be aware of those new HMOs and those proposals, and will be invited to make comments. And the planning process will obviously look to incorporate any mitigation measures that are appropriate to that application. So and then finally, I just thought I would just because I know the map was quite small in the recommendation report, but I just wanted to recap. So the green areas on this map are all the wards which would be affected by the non-immediate Article 4. Orange area is the Perivale ward. There is an area in North Acton which is in the dark red, which is in Ealing but covered by the OPTC area. So we can't effectively make an Article 4 to cover that area. The OPTC local planning authority, of course, have their own Article 4 direction for some smaller geographical areas. And then the sort of lighter purple is just to sort of show you the OPTC area. So hopefully that makes sense, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, right. Committee, we have a speaker who has made herself aware of her. Dragana Tomasevic. Apologies if I've said your name wrong, but please come up. As is the case for every planning application, you have 3 minutes, and I will let you know 30 seconds out when your 3 minutes is going to be up. So I do need to stop you at 3 minutes.
So it has to be 3 minutes.
It has to be 3 minutes.
I'm going to do a robotic speech then.
That's fine.
So
do
excuse
it
me.
how you like. It's your speech, but
right.
I will have to stop you at 3 minutes, unfortunately.
All right.
Okay. Okay, when you're ready, fire away.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Dragana Tomasevic and I'm chair of Medway Village Residents Association. I represent some 800 homeowners and long-term tenants. Thank you for allowing me to speak here tonight. I cannot possibly summarize everything in 3 minutes, so I hope you have all read Planning Officer's report as well as the My London articles the chairman has shared with the committee members. An immediate Article 4 direction is urgently needed in Perivale ward because of the specific financial incentives in our area for a small group of greedy investors both to buy and convert houses to HMOs and to house as many dangerous and vulnerable tenants as possible. The planning report states, and I quote, "Many HMO provide good quality low-cost housing for our communities, but that is not always a true picture. We know that social landlords are paid housing benefit directly and in Perivale can do charge 40% above market rental prices. In return, vulnerable tenants, many of whom should be in supported accommodation, get substandard properties. HMO management companies do not care about the physical and mental well-being of their tenants and do not provide necessary support and maintenance. Tenants are left to their own devices and many turn to drug abuse and crime. Perivale is at the very outer edge of the inner West London housing benefit zone. Perivale houses prices are therefore cheapest in the zone and rents would also be the cheapest, but because housing benefit is paid directly to landlords to cover rent at the same rate across the whole zone, it is paid far above the market rent. Thus, the financial incentives for the investors to convert properties into HMO is lucrative in Perivale. In return for taking on housing benefit eligible tenants, a small group of greedy HMO landlords in Perivale can and do therefore charge £1,200 for approximate 9 square metre self-contained box room when the market rent should be about 800. These tenants include substance abusers, alcoholic, those with serious mental health issues, as well as former offenders. Ealing Council has allowed, through its placement of such tenants in these HMOs, toothless HMO licenses and its failure to implement the Article 4 direction, greedy investors to rapidly increase the number of HMOs in Perivale, creating a shortage of family homes. Consequently, local residents live with never-ending ASB and crime from dangerous and vulnerable HMO tenants. For example, residents recently helped a female victim fleeing domestic violence.
30 seconds.
Who was placed in a HMO with 5 other men. She was abused and suffered mental breakdown. We had to deal with this. I personally have been threatened with rape outside my own home. I live next door to a HMO and I'm happy to share my experience if panel is interested. In our village, people are regularly overdosed on drugs and passed out drunk on our roads. Our emergency services are overwhelmed. Ambulances now accompanied by police and enter Medway Village approximately 3 times a day. Our community cannot cope with the present number of HMO.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think
Do you have any questions? I'm happy to answer.
I will allow the committee if they want to ask a question. No, there are no questions.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much. So now I put it in the hands of the committee. So we're going to run it like we normally run a planning application, which is we'll go to questions first, and then we'll go into debate after that. So I'm looking around for indications of questions. So I've got Councillor Ball start, and everyone else keep their hands up, and I'll write them down. But Councillor Ball, fire away. I'll do this side first. So
yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, so well, it's clear that Perivale Vale is the priority, and that would be first. But in terms of the rest of the borough, is obviously it's subject to consultation, as it says in the document. But is the intention that the whole rest of the borough would have the same Article 4 direction 12 months later, or is it a question, more of a question? Yeah, I'm seeing nodding. So it's not picking other wards. It's the intention is to roll it out everywhere after 12 months. Yeah.
Blanket after 12 months. That's correct. I'll let Alex answer it. Sorry.
Yeah. So you're quite right. The recommendation would affect the whole borough. We're doing it in two parts. The Perivale would be the immediate one, and then the rest of the borough that we cover, excluding the OPDC area, would be would be effective after a year. That's it.
So I've got Councillor Rice and then Councillor Shaw. Has anyone else? Right. OK. Keep your hands up if you want. Right.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just really wondering about what kind of precedent there is elsewhere on this, and what kind of experience people have had elsewhere, and what kind of elements are involved in seeing if an HMO can be given planning permission. Because one thing I'm thinking about as well is that would there be, for example, a maximum number of people that you could be allowed into one home? I'm thinking back to a case when I was in HMOs during my 20s. Right from my 20s, I was living in HMOs. I mean, there was once about 14 people in one house. So that was not particularly great. And also thinking about on the ASB side, I mean, because to me, it really does feel like the ASB tends to affect people within the home more than it probably affects people outside. And I just wonder really how much work has been done to look at what really works in order to improve the situation with antisocial behaviour when it comes to HMOs. What kind of knowledge do we have? I mean, I can give an example of one home I was in where there was a lot of violence. I mean, I was once sexually attacked and everything else went on. And that was a very poorly kept home. But somewhere else where I live, which was actually quite nice in Northfields, we didn't have that kind of problem. So I'm just wondering about what kind of studies have been done in order to make sure that we can tackle that ASB and the poor living conditions that people have in them. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try and take them in bunches. That's right. Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It was just a minor point of clarification. Just you mentioned that the Secretary of State must authorise and can amend. Would there be any right of reply sort of from Ely as the local authority, or can the Secretary of State just amend and say that this is it, and that's it done in that amendment?
OK, if you want to take those two together, Alex, please.
So picking up on how applications would be assessed going forward, obviously, as I mentioned, we would apply the similar rule of thought in terms of how we assess the larger HMO. So we would be looking at the quality of the accommodation, whether there's a proper management plan in place, whether there's the correct number of toilets and facilities, etc. So that would be what we would have to do typically. And it may be that we have to kind of learn what's appropriate because, because of the fact that they were traditionally permitted development. So we need to kind of look at what the impact is. It will be quite complex. One of the things that this Article 4 direction will do is it's possible to convert flats into HMOs, which is another kind of noticeable loophole. So essentially, we have seen applications to convert family homes into 2 flats, and then those in turn to be converted into HMOs up to 6. So that's quite a lot of residents. So we have to look at those things as well. And I think just to give some reassurance, we do monitor, for example, when we have refused permission and it goes to appeal, we will monitor the appeal decisions and look at how how they're being assessed. And we have seen some recent successes where the appeals have gone in our favour, and that has been very much based on evidence and information that residents have actually provided as part of that assessment process. So having the ability to comment and make your representations is probably a really positive thing here to do as well. So you're feeding that through as part of that assessment. I hope that's kind of picking up on that. I mean, in terms of antisocial behaviour, it is quite tricky in terms of the planning process. However, because typically we deal with the physical impacts, and we of course don't have the control over who is occupying the accommodation, which is where our colleagues' work in the licensing section really comes into play. So these things are joined up, but they are doing slightly different things. So as I understand it, it's part of the licensing the license that's issued. There is a requirement to adhere to certain terms and conditions which deals with that antisocial behaviour. So that really needs to kind of be part of that process as well. But I think, certainly having we will also look at whether we need to, if appropriate, prepare guidance, which will be like good practice, and some of those things can be fed in. And of course, that might be information that comes from the notification process as well, when residents feed back what their experiences are, and we can look at that and incorporate that if it's required. Just on the Secretary of State point, so move on. Sorry, I'm just going to defer to my legal colleague.
Yes, so we would have a right of reply if the Secretary of State was minded to make a direction. However, he or she, I should say, can still make that direction, and we would need to comply with that. But we would be able to, dispute anything initially said. And just to add, there's no right of appeal against the making of an Article 4 direction generally, although we could potentially be judicially reviewed, but there isn't a general right of appeal.
Okay. Okay. I've got 4 more indications of questions. Councillor Mahmood, Councillor Young, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Raza. If anyone else wants to indicate, please let me know. So Councillor, I'll take them in twos. So Councillor Mahmood, please, first.
Thank you, Chair. Just to put the 2 clarification, Alex, with you. One is when you said consultation, so the consultation through the Perivale residents or notification. I just want to understand in terms of implementation of Article 4. Second is just wanted to make sure the residents of Perivale will not be losing the right of permitted and lawful development overall, apart from the family houses will be converted in the HMO. So I just wanted to clarify these 2 things. Thank you.
Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very much in favour of this, but I've got 2 concerns. One is whether making the Article 4 direction will make much difference. Can I ask what percentage of current HMO applications are rejected? And the second is whether the evidence that we're proposing to present to the Secretary of State is sufficient. Because as far as I can see, it's based on what's on page 56, where the number of ASB issues has jumped in the last couple of years. But looking at your figures, only 20 or 25% of those ASB incidents can be attributed to HMOs. And I wonder whether we need to include some of the evidence that, like the lady who spoke, presented on the abuse of illegal materials by users of in the HMOs and the exploitation by landlords of the situation. Otherwise, I'm worried that the Secretary of State will take one look at this and say, only 20% of your increase is down to HMOs. You can't justify the immediate direction.
Okay, Alex, do you want to address those, both those councillors' questions, please?
So, Councillor Mahmood, you wanted to understand the notification.
Can you hear okay at the back? So you need to bring it nearer, I think.
Sorry. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Sorry. So, Councillor Mahmood, you wanted to know about the consultation process, which is the official notification or initiation of the effect of the Article 4. So we haven't fixed how we're going to do it, but we would we've detailed in the committee report that our intention is to do that by site notices, targeted site notices across the borough, because we will be doing notification for both Article 4s. There'll be public notices in the press, etc., and on our website. So we will obviously finalise that in the next few days, and of course, we'll make sure it's evenly across the whole borough, etc. But it will be quite a big exercise for us to do. But we've already been thinking about that. And then the second part of your question was around, does this impact on any other permitted development rights which exist? And the answer is no, because this mechanism is quite focused on this particular matter, which is around the change of use of a dwelling house into a small HMO. So hopefully that answers your question. So Councillor Young, you asked about the whether we have any stats on the decision rates for our existing HMOs. I don't for that, but I think it's not entirely relevant in relation to what we are looking at tonight, because what we're really focusing on is the smaller HMOs, which have traditionally been able to effectively be created without the need for planning permission, and it's fairly obvious that there are a huge amount of them, and a lot of them don't cause any problems. And in particular, the report sets out where there are big concentrations in certain wards already. So yes, there are a lot. But the other thing about an HMO is there's a distinction around is that houses of multiple occupation are people who are not of the same household. They are all completely separate, and they are effectively forced to live together. Usually have no control over, if someone moves out, someone else moves in, they probably won't have any control over who that might be. So it's actually quite difficult to extract all of that information. So we have based it on the information that we have. And of course, the notification process will invite those comments to come in, and that will be really, really valuable information for us to present back to you as a committee member and the Secretary of State once we move, if we can, towards confirmation of the Article 4 directions. So hopefully that's answered that as far as I can tonight, but there will be more information that we'll have to consider as part of this process. But based on what we know, this is why we're making the recommendation.
Okay, right. Councillor Kelly's next, and then Councillor Raza.
Thank you, Chair. So if we were minded to grant Article 4 as proposed, I can see the benefits in terms of consultation and residents getting actively involved. But speaking to some of the issues, the woman who spoke in support of this application from Medway, about the type of tenant that often comes into these properties, how would this Article 4 manage that? I don't see there any mechanism for deciding what type of tenant takes up the property. As far as I can see, it doesn't. So you will have a property that's fit for purpose because it passes the criteria that we've laid out, but you will still, how would you know whether that person coming in has a propensity for drug use, etc., etc. I just want to be clear that it does it or does it not address that?
Councillor Raza.
Do we get any advice from the Met Police as to any of these issues around the HMOs? Is there like a regular mechanism where we can continue to get advice and guidance in the planning process? Is there any kind of crosstalk in that we can be better informed as to where it might be a good idea or not? Thanks.
Okay, right. Alex.
So, Councillor Kelly, your question around the actual tenants and what controls the planning system can impose is quite difficult, is quite challenging, because there are limits to in the planning system that doesn't allow us to really control that side of things. But what we can do, and is readily possible, is to think about how properties are managed. Again, it's a slight crossover between some of the work that would be expected as part of a licensing permission. So there can be things that are built in, and it can certainly be much clearer in what's expected. There clearly will need to be more further work with landlords, etc. But there is already some of that already ongoing across the council, and perhaps the planning process can fit into that, particularly in relation to how we deal with applications coming forward, but also in terms of the other aspects, the earlier things like the planning enforcement side of things. So up until now, it's been quite difficult for us to actually do very much if we receive a complaint in planning enforcement. So at least this will help to actually have a look at the impacts in more detail, invite an application, and have the ability to assess it on its merits, and in particular address any impacts it might have on the local amenity and the character of areas, and most importantly allow residents to actually have their say. So we can address those matters. So kind of moving into the next bit, which was, it's a bit of a segue from Councillor Raza, but asking you around how the police might get involved. Now, on other types of applications that we would receive in planning, if appropriate, we would consult with the police, and they do routinely input into the process. So, I mean, at this moment in time, it's very difficult to predict how many applications we might possibly receive in the future. And it is a bit like having a crystal ball. We can make estimates, but we will need to have a look at what those impacts. And of course, I suspect our planning enforcement team will also be quite busy, following up, making sure people are putting in their applications. The important thing I haven't highlighted, but it is in our report, is that this will only be effective from the date, so it does not relate to any existing HMOs or HMOs that are maybe suspected. You have to think about that as well. And we will continue to monitor the decision-making process. And perhaps when we move to at later stage, I will pick up on the question that Councillor Young asked around, some of the other stats around other types of applications and appeal decisions, and we can certainly feed that back to you in due course. And it's entirely relevant. So thank you.
Okay, I see. Oh, Councillor Young, second question, or
please, another question. Okay. If the Article 4 direction goes in ahead, will we be able to reject an application on the grounds that there are too many HMOs already in an area?
That might be quite tricky, particularly in relation to how our current policy, our emerging policies are framed. There is a hook in the new emerging local plan to sort of look at that, but there's nothing explicit around proliferation. We would need to think about that very, very carefully, and we would need to obviously have very good evidence to substantiate that and the reasons why having a certain volume is causing an impact. So it kind of, it is based on that thorough analysis, which, it may be that as part of the guidance that might kind of snowball from this. It might be around, building that kind of evidence around what prospective applicants are expected to do to show that they actually do work and they're not actually providing a negative impact on the local amenity. So it would be very difficult at this stage, but unless there's a very specific reason or a policy that would actually monitor those sorts of amounts of certain uses. And you may recall historically in local plans in the past that there were similar kind of restrictive or policies. Giving an example, even in relation to like shops and things like that, there is a big move away from that, but there does need to be some flexibility. And I think what we need to bear in mind is around assessing what the impact is, what the harm is, and whether there are any sensible mechanisms in the planning system that can be applied to address those concerns. So I'll leave it there.
I can remember historically back in the day that we used to reject too many institutional applications in a particular street because it would change the character of the street. So my further question is, do we need to have another look at the borough plan before it's set in
You have to
stone?
go through the chair, councillor, please. Yes, you can have another question, but it's not your committee here. So just do your questions and then you can do the debate afterwards.
Yes, I'm just asking a question. Do we need to have a further look at the borough plan before it's set in stone to allow us to reject HMOs on the grounds that there are too many already?
No, I think at this stage, and we have references in the recommendation report, that we have a hook in the emerging local plan, and it certainly sets out the ability for us to provide clearer guidance on what would be suitable and not, and that will obviously help to make decisions much more easily. But I don't, at this stage, I think it's been carefully considered before the Reg 19 local plan was published, and certainly it's also it's been a part of this process in reviewing the work. So that would be my answer. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Oh, Councillor Wall.
I noticed that a lot of the other London boroughs have also introduced either immediately or most of them non-immediately, I think. But is there anything that we can learn from them or have learnt as to the effectiveness of what they've already put in?
Yes, when someone else has applied and is further ahead, then there are always lessons to be learned. So in making this recommendation, I can assure you that there were discussions with some of these boroughs as well. In particular, we had discussions with Merton because they did a borough-wide Article 4, so that was quite important. A lot of other boroughs don't have borough-wide Article 4s. They might be very specific to local areas, and that might be quite interesting to have a look at that as well. But certainly, yes, we can learn from those sorts of things. But I think I think we're following the sort of good practice that we know about. So I think it is the right thing to do, and I think in particular for us. Our surrounding boroughs have Article 4s as well, so perhaps that's also making us a little bit more attractive for this, for certain landlords to come into the borough. So I think we're doing it in a sensible way. I think having the right rules, the right the ability to assess things and whether they're appropriate is absolutely the right thing to do. It would be my professional opinion.
Okay, I'm going to move into debate, and I'll start the debate actually. So I just want to pick up on a couple of things. Councillor Kelly, in terms of tenants, etc. I think it runs from a poor design and a poor builder and a poor landlord and poor licensing, and if you can stop that at the beginning, where you create a proper design, you don't have front rooms split down the middle. Each gets a window or rooms off rooms, etc. That can be a starting point in terms of, getting better landlords that have to spend a bit more money on design, etc. So that could be a starting place. And in terms of proliferation in areas, I would say that we have that in a lot of areas where we have kind of main roads that are quite, the people that live there are quite itinerant, and one I can think of is Greenford Avenue. It's quite a thoroughfare that a lot of people, there's a lot of turnover of people in that area. So, it might be that we should concentrate at places and not concentrate in other places. It's a debatable point. So we might tie ourselves up if we start saying we can't have more than 3 in an area or 3, in the street or something. It's a debatable point, and we probably have to look at it in detail. I think what we're trying to do here is stop the bad side of landlords getting multiple HMOs and not really looking after them and not really caring about them or the people in them. I think that's what we're trying to start the process here tonight. And with that, I'll stop. So I don't normally enter into debate, but okay. Indications. Councillor Hamidi. And please put your hands up and keep them up.
Thank you, Chair. As we know, obviously, this borough has a very diverse and dynamic nature. We have many good landlords in the area, and there are many boroughs like Hounslow, Barnet, Brent and Enfield who are implementing the entire areas under Article 4 directions for HMOs either later on this year or they've started the process. I do believe it's important for all of us to remember that not every person that lives in an HMO is involved with some sort of antisocial behavior. You have many young professionals living in these properties. I do think bringing in Article 4 direction will help with safeguarding the quality of life for those living in those areas. Based on everything that I've heard tonight and mentioned just now, I'm minded to support implementing Article 4 direction in the borough, I guess.
Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Hamidi. I'll take Councillor Mahmood next. I should have taken you first, Councillor Mahmood, as we're talking about Perivale and a lot of people from Perivale here tonight. So as you're a Perivale councillor, but you've got to remember you are not a Perivale councillor right at this moment. You're a member of this committee.
I'm a member of committee and I represent Perivale Ward. Yes, thank you, Chair. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. What I'm just wondering, and thank you for Dragana and all the residents come here, and we can understand the frustration and disappointment and the life has been distracted by HMO, the everyday life. And I myself and James Murray, Member of Parliament, and my colleagues have attended several meetings with the residents, and I appreciate their concerns and their fear living by next to HMO or the area where the large many family houses has been converted into HMO. Chair, antisocial behavior is very high, and the environmental crime is very high, and the residents are living, especially in Medway Estate, living in hell. And what James Murray and I were struggling for a long time to stop greedy or irresponsible landlord to convert family houses. Many family houses are converted in HMOs. So there is no tools available at the moment to stop without to exercise the lawful development and permitted development and convert family houses to the HMOs. So, Chair, by looking at the amount of complaint and the situation in the Medway Estate is terrible. Can I just quote what happened last night, which is in the newspaper as well? When the police helicopter was there 1.5 hours, there was a police with the guns, with the dogs in Medway Estate, and half of the Medway Estate was closed. And so that the residents living everyday life with the fear and danger, their life has been disrupted. So I think Article 4 is a step forward, And this is the first step towards the situation. And I am sure myself, James Murray, we are supporting Article 4 direction. And I would urge my colleague to support Article 4 direction immediately in Perivale and after that all over the borough. So, Chair, that's my contribution.
Thank you, Councillor Moot. I should mention, I forgot at the beginning that James Murray, our MP, well, my MP and yours, couldn't be here tonight, and he did extend his apologies for not being here. So he was caught up with other business. Without further ado, Councillor Shaw.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this is an interesting paper, I think, and given the work of other boroughs around us, I think this is a timely paper as well, and it's time that it was considered. Similarly to Councillor Hamidi here, I think I would stress that noting in the paper that antisocial behaviour in HMOs is, sort of it tends to be around 5%, 4 or 5% is most common in there, and that for many residents in Ealing and indeed right across London, housing and gateways into housing in London will probably be through HMOs. It certainly was for me when I was younger, and for my wife as well. I've actually lived next door to an HMO for the last 5 or 6 years. It's properly run, it's properly managed, it's mainly full of young professionals. I've never had a problem from any of the tenants there. So it's worth emphasising that. However, the chair of the Medway Village Residents Association, who spoke, thank you very much, did make clear how conditions in Perivale, particularly market conditions, have led to a proliferation in Perivale at the moment, or over the last sort of few years, and really, sort of exploitative perhaps landlords and exploitative developers who are seeking to take advantage, and are doing so quickly, possibly also pushed by the fact that some of our neighbouring boroughs have already taken or have Article 4s in place or are looking at this. So there's particular conditions that have led to Perivale, which is why I think it's sensible that Perivale's focused on in the first place, and really we can use it as a trial to how it will then run across the rest of the borough on a wider basis, in a year's time, rolling it out. With all this in mind, I think that this is a sensible paper, and I welcome it, and I will be supporting the move towards the Article 4. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Young.
Thank you. I'm strongly in favour of this, but I am concerned that the evidence that we are presenting to the Secretary of State is not sufficient. I think that there is a risk that he might reject the application. The figures that we're seeing on page 56 only show a relatively small increase in ASB, and it doesn't adequately reflect the real experience on the ground of the residents. We've heard tonight from the chairman of the Residents Association, but I've heard before, because I'm associated with the estate as a school governor, of some of the horrific things that they have experienced. And I would strongly suggest that we ask the police to back up our figures with some of the details of what they have experienced themselves over the last couple of years. The other point is that I'm not sure how effective it will be unless we are going to be strict on our discussion of any new application. I do think we need to look at the borough plan and say specifically that we will consider rejecting HMOs when there are already sufficient HMOs in the area. We used to do it for institutions. It's something that's well practiced in principle, and it's something we could do quite easily. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Ball.
Yeah, thank you. So first, I'd like to reinforce what Councillor Hamidi and Shaw and Councillor Rice said earlier on, that not everyone who lives in HMOs are problem tenants, and certainly I can think of one of my party's kind of top activists locally as a geography teacher who lives in an HMO, and I can't think of anyone less associated with these sorts of problems. But clearly, there are major problems with badly converted and very badly managed HMOs in Perivale. that have been that have got that way due to unscrupulous landlords. Certainly, we've heard eloquent speech about it here, and we've seen the strength of feeling outside. And I know that it was a major issue in the general election in Ealing North as well. So it clearly is a major issue, and it's right that it's urgently addressed tonight. I'm also aware of issues, not as many in number, but sort of similar types of issues that have happened in other wards. I know in Ealing Broadway and Anger Hill and my own ward, for instance, there have been problems with violence between tenants, antisocial behaviour, drug taking associated with particular HMOs. So, rolling out the programme to the rest of the borough is sensible also. But I understand, because it's less, the problem is less intense elsewhere. I think it probably is sensible to avoid the potential for legal challenges, and so doing it on the deferred basis for a year. So yes, I'm agreeing with the recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ball. I would normally say please don't repeat what's gone on before, but as we've only got one application tonight, I'll give some latitude tonight. So, and I'm not saying you are going to, by the way, Councillor Rice, but so Councillor Rice next, please.
Thank you. Yes, I'm on the theme of repeating yourself. I'm at risk of repeating things I might have said at the last meeting, because I do speak quite passionately on this issue as well. Just the fact that because of the way the housing market has gone, this is really essential accommodation for so many of us. And it really is at the point where, I mean, I sort of talked about living in HMOs through my 20s. I know a lot of people of my age, I'm 50 now, a lot of people of my age and older still have to live in HMOs. That's how bad it is really now. So it is very much essential, and we do need to realise this is going to be a reality for some time yet. So, I mean, when it comes down to the ASB that I talked about earlier, I mean, one thing that looking at the report, there are various types of ASB mentioned, and one thing was prostitution, for example. Now, one thing that does worry me is that is it possible we could be scapegoating some of the HMOs for some of the problems that we have in our areas when it comes down to ASB, when it comes down to crime? We're at risk of just saying, well, that's the problem, we're going to solve that, that's going to solve everything. Could we just please remember that there is an awful lot of other crime and ASB going on in our area, so we need to tackle that at the same time. The reason why I picked up prostitution is I did live in a flat just across from Ealing Cricket Club, a very posh upmarket area, and there was a flat beneath me that was actually a brothel. So it goes on everywhere, even in very posh upmarket areas where I couldn't possibly afford to buy anywhere. And so it does happen as well. And if we're also worried about there being too many HMOs, really the solution to that is not just a case of let's have planning permission which prevents a large number of HMOs coming to be. We're talking about well-managed HMOs coming to be. We're talking about making sure that the whole system changes so that people can actually afford their own housing, so that people who are earning a good salary should be able to at least afford to rent their own flat somewhere. So this is the real solution. Let's build that proper housing that people need as well. Let's make sure that the whole system changes so people can afford rents and mortgages. But at the same time, remember that there are so many of us who are dependent on HMOs right now. It's a very unfortunate situation, but let's make it great for them. Let's do it for them, because it's for those people inside those HMOs who deserve the decent living conditions. And so that's why we're here tonight, to make sure that happens. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor Rice. Councillor Raza.
A bit difficult to top that, but I won't be repeating all of that again. I really welcome this paper, and being a neighbour of Councillor Mahmood's in Central Greenford, we also have many of the issues that have been raised up today. We've seen a huge increase in HMOs as well as the ASB that goes along with them. And a lot of international investment, or greed, if you like, is behind some of that. So this is a bigger problem than the one that we just sort of see on the surface. But for our communities, most definitely we do need to do something, and this paper, I think, is the first step in doing that. So I very warmly welcome that. And also, I do think that there needs to be more, perhaps, to support landlords to be better. Because yes, we are kind of working around how to provide that better housing, but also there does need to be some more responsibility on landlords and the types of landlords that we do have working in our areas. So I would say that that's possibly work for future. But as far as this paper goes, I'm minded to support it, and it goes a long way to doing things that we want to do and improve the areas in our community.
Okay, Councillor Kelly wants to make a small point, I think. So, oh, you. All right. No, carry on, Councillor Kelly.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I mean, lots of excellent points have been raised here. Councillor Rouser there and Councillor Rice, and really just to pull the point about good guidance for landlords is important. I mean, there's people that believe it's possible that there's people that generally want to invest some money and develop a HMO and do it properly and do it and provide good housing to people. I mean, I'm sure those people exist, and I am for this paper, but my fear is that we sort of criminalise. We don't want to criminalise HMOs. HMOs, capital letters, HMO. They're registered. They're people that want to do it properly. So I just hope that we don't tie it all up in bureaucracy. That's my hope, that we don't do that. So a good application should come through, and a good application. I'm very much part of the broken window theory. You know, if you've got a property that doesn't have broken windows and is tidy, it will attract a better type of tenant, and those people that need further support in the community won't have to go to these places, and they'll be able to find more suitable accommodation for themselves. There's a lot of sort of HMO tenants coming for a lot of bad rap, and hopefully this would actually address that. And there's been big challenges in Perivale because of its location out just close to a station, and it being at the end of that market banding. And I'm sort of satisfied that the Article 4 is going to help. So I'd be very minded to support this application.
Okay, I don't see any more people indicating apart from. Yeah, I'm over here.
Just on Councillor Young's concern about evidence, we will have the opportunity, should the Secretary of State raise any concerns, to add to our evidence. And obviously we will be working with colleagues in other teams, the police, as Councillor Rouser mentioned. So it's not fixed in stone what we have now. We will be able to build on the information and evidence as we go along.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, I think we're just. I think no one else is indicating. I just want to say that, you know, there's been quite a lot of similar issues within my ward of North Hamwell within the Cuckoo Estate, and we have worked with antisocial behaviour officers to try and remedy that. But it takes some time to do that. And if we can help at this end of the planning side of things, then I think this is a good start, and hopefully we're going in the right direction. And I'd like to thank the committee for their contributions tonight. I'd like to thank residents for their contribution and for being here tonight. And I can't take you back in, I'm sorry, but I'm going to go to the vote now. So, but thank you for your speech, by the way, earlier. Sorry, so we got vote on both. There's three, well, 2 plus the third, which is wrapping up the 2, isn't it? So we'll take votes on both, Alison, is it? Right? Yeah. So, okay. There's the recommendation 1, which is the general permitted development. So the 12.
The non-immediate.
The non-immediate. So the 12-month, hence HMO. Sorry, there were bed sits in my day. Sorry. just to be clear, it's the borough-wide, apart from Paravan, apart from OPDC areas that we're voting on first. So all those in favour of that part of the I'll just be clear. Anyone against? Any abstentions? I knew it, but sometimes people change their mind. But anyway, okay. So on the second part, which is the Paravel specific area, immediate as of today, tomorrow, whenever we
send out the notice.
when we send the notices out. So very almost immediate. Yes. All those in favour, please indicate. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Right, so both of those are passed tonight. Right, thank you very much. The next committee is October the, when is it? Anyone? Is it early October? 2nd of October, very early October. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.